Hey, welcome back to Two Super Guys Trade Stocks. I'm Dylan.
And I'm Vinny, and today we're going to talk about Alibaba, one of the favorites of this channel. Someone asked for a little bit of an update. There hasn't been a whole lot of specific news about Alibaba, but some kind of happenings in the Chinese economy more broadly that we can talk about. So we're going to go ahead and discuss that.
Two Super Guys Trade Stocks. Baba is at a dangerous price, Vinny.
Oh,
Sexy
yeah?
price.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I get that. Main man Charlie Munger stood kind of flat with his most recent quarterly filing. I put that out as a community post, the first ever on this channel while you were actually in Iceland. Try that out. But the background here is kind of more where the talking points, I guess, will come from here. This is the 20th National Chinese Congress that was just held in this past week. And now basically it's an opportunity for all the communist leaders to come together, and they kind of set out their 5-year plan and have kind of a State of the Union address a little bit like we get here in the United States once a year, but it helps determine what the plan is and what the major themes are for the next 5 years in the Chinese government.
Okay.
This is Alibaba stock. Yeah.
Now,
So, yeah.
we have a longtime user who said that he would finally buy Baba at it was either 68 or 69. Hit 69, buddy. I'm
Yeah.
expecting a receipt of 500 shares.
It's getting pretty goddamn close. It's disgusting. Back to 2016 levels. 2016.
Sexy.
You weren't even old enough to drink at that point. That's how,
That's not accurate.
yeah, I know. I just wanted to run through a couple of things to just show the comparison, like how much this company has changed, yet the valuation is effectively flat over that time period.
All right, well, this should
So
be fun.
yeah, nothing too crazy here. Revenue was 15.68. I got this from their annual report, billion US dollars back in 2016. 2022 was the most recent year end, which was in March of 2022, 134 billion. It's cool, bro. It's 8.5x the revenue.
Classic.
Unfortunately, though, the free cash flow only doubled. I mean, not great. Definitely could have been a whole lot better given that massive growth in top line revenue. We'd hope they would have scaled, but they've kind of had to change their business model a little bit, where they've been less of a platform like they were in their early days, where it was just them facilitating this, kind of commerce, e-commerce transactions. Whereas now they are the seller, so they're obviously going to get more revenue, but thinner profit margins from that sort of activity. So I get that.
Didn't they? They
Well,
also got fined a bunch and lost some cash there too.
3 billion, 3 billion. Now, if you're looking at more of a visual kind of representation, this is their revenue growth over time. Very nice, steady uphill climb there. EBITDA, bullshit earnings, right? You've heard it referred to that as before, right? EBITDA is
Hmm.
basically bullshit earnings.
No.
No, because it's not really truly earnings, because earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and
Right.
amortization, a little actual expenses for the businesses, but it's a good way to have a proxy of how much cash the business generated at the end of the day.
Okay.
They didn't. Macro Trends doesn't have a free cash flow chart you can pull up, but this is an approximation for it.
Do love macro
But
trends.
yeah, when you compare 2016 to now, still producing significantly more EBITDA on this chart, and obviously talked about revenue being significantly up from 2016 as well. So you're getting a much better business for the same price, effectively. Although there's been
Right.
some dilution, so it's not exactly. But it
Well,
had me thinking.
there's been dilution, but they also have a deal to buy back a shit ton of shares. So.
Yes. Now they've kind of pivoted towards the repurchase side of that. They have been, shareholder based comp like dilution over the years. Yeah. It had me thinking the other day about this famous Warren Buffett quote, right? Be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. What does that really mean on a day-to-day basis? And I was
You're
thinking
a
about
wizard, Harry.
yeah. Oh man, rest in peace.
Oh yeah.
This really kind of made me think about, why am I so attracted to these absolute dumpster fires of stocks? And the conclusion I was kind of thinking about is that when you're buying these dumpster fire of stocks like Baba is, it really takes one thing to go right. They literally have to do just one thing and they're out of the doghouse. Compared to these Kathy Woods hype investing kind of stocks where if they mess up one thing, they go down 80% and get destroyed. That's just how it goes, because they have to be perfect. Whereas Baba, if Baba does anything right, they're going to go up.
Yeah. Or they don't even have to change anything. If just positive news comes out about the Chinese government, it goes up, right?
Yeah.
Um, I I do agree with you in the vast majority of stocks, except Intel, trash. But I will say I would I've asked this question before. At what price would you buy Baba more? I guess.
You know, it's a question of risk tolerance. Although I feel fairly confident in it, the reason why I'm able to tolerate these, kind of swings down, like I think my cost basis is still like 140s or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
still
mine
like,
was 138.
50% underwater or something like that on my Baba stocks, despite selling covered calls to try to reduce my cost basis a little bit. Um, it's more that I think I want to have about 10% or so of my total portfolio invested in Baba stock, and I'm willing to lose all of that. That is within my risk tolerance. If it goes to zero, it's fine. I don't think it will. I think it's probably worth about 3 times or so what it I actually paid for it. But well, not what I paid for it, but what it is now. So like double from like basically where I would pay for it. But that's the knowing your own risk tolerance and how much you're willing to allocate towards those sort of plays. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I'm buying more. I bought more already. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, if you have the stones, go for it, man. So this was that big news kind of story that China's big party Congress happened this week. You know, this didn't get a whole lot of play, and our patron saint Michael Burry over here talked a little bit about it too. How much this will affect Chinese kind of economy in terms of this ban on semiconductors? Did you see like kind of some of the more details about where exactly they're going to cut them off?
No.
So they can't have any chips smaller than like 14 nanometers, basically.
So, new age chips.
Yeah, exactly. So they'd have to go back several generations, and even for Intel, which
Yeah,
is not
Intel's
saying
behind the
much.
ball. I think they're on 7, right?
Uh,
Or
well,
5?
they're not using nanometers anymore either. They're getting a little bit weird, but they didn't really specific. I looked for a news article about this. So Alibaba Cloud has that Yitan like I think it's 710 CPU, which is a 5 nanometer process, and it's built by Taiwan Semiconductors. It was a licensed design from SoftBank. It sounds like they would not be able to access that anymore at this point. So that's a major negative from Alibaba's standpoint regarding this China kind of chip ban. But I couldn't find anything specifically addressing that. But that's my guess.
Okay, that's interesting.
All right. So they did talk about that at the actual national conference here, talking about how that they were targeted for this chip ban, and that their independence and their government, their safety of their actual country, depends in part upon having a good semiconductor industry based in China. They're pretty far behind, though, from what I understand, from a technological standpoint. So it's going to be a major struggle for them. They're doing it from a military safety standpoint, which is definitely a little scary, a little worrisome, I guess. But
A little
I
iffy.
get the motivation for that.
Yep.
Yeah. The other thing that they're still continuing to fight is a zero COVID policy. Uh, basically, they're locking down still wholesale chunks of the population anytime they have an upswing in cases. And that's been really detrimental to not just the functioning of the economy from a standpoint of having workers be able to go to work, but of trust in the economy. Are you likely to license your manufacturing to a country where you're not sure if they're going to shut down the entire city for like a month?
I would
So
not.
you've seen a lot of industries shifting outside of China at this point from a manufacturing standpoint. They're becoming less and less like the warehouse or producer of the world.
So what you're saying is we have yet another obstacle
Yes,
on top of the auditing issue and Chinese communism issue. Okay, solid.
I am. I am saying that. So when you look at they kind of basically did analysis for where they counted the number of times he said various terms within the speech. Yeah, I know, right? Remember you and I did this? I did this for Jerome Powell's speech.
Yeah, you did.
Um, Yeah, but this is how they analyze speeches. This is CSIS. I forget exactly what that stands for, but it's international like studies
Jesus.
company, and security was the big theme. Security, military, those are the big ones. They actually have security being mentioned almost twice as many times in this conference as compared to the one back in 2017. That definitely tells you where their heads at, I would say.
Okay. What an interesting piece of data. All right.
Yeah, I know. Um, now this could be taken as a positive omen, I would say, for Alibaba. We are talking about this focus on modernization, high quality development. If you're really looking to modernize your country and have this kind of progress towards like better technology, ultimately your probably best bet is to take the reins off of your leading tech companies, right? Like
Yes.
that would be a good way to get there.
100%.
So if they're going to be really aggressive about this, I think they're going to be less likely to be quite as strict with kind of controlling the major tech giants. Is my interpretation of what
That's
they're
a
trying
good
to say.
theory. I mean, you can't have both. You can't have harsh regulatory statutes on all your big tech stuff and then also try to go towards modernization. It's physically impossible because the companies are
Yeah,
what brings modernization. So you're cutting off, what is it? Cutting you off your hand to spite your face. What is it? Cutting off your nose to spite
nose to
your.
spite your face. Yeah,
No,
I thought you were going for the cut them off at the knees kind of one. I thought that's what you were
okay,
going
we could
for.
do that. It was a mixture of both.
Yeah, yeah. um, their continued economic growth is definitely going to be partly tied to this zero COVID policy and these rolling lockdowns. That's the real point here that they're trying to make. It depends on whether or not they're opening for business in 2023. How much of it will be open and during the year, like how often they'll have to lock down is going to really determine it. This is a little shady, a little worrisome here. They actually delayed the release of the third quarter GDP data. It's supposed to be out Tuesday morning, I guess, and they held it until after the Chinese National Conference. So yeah, it makes you a little bit worried.
So when is it out? Do we know?
It hasn't been released yet,
Oh boy. Okay,
but
so I have a chance
the
to buy more shares.
yeah, you very well may. Uh, but the projections for Chinese GDP growth are, this is from the I think it was IMF, are still tracking mid 4.5%, which is above what you see here even in the United States. They're still expected to be growing at a higher rate. So longer term, still have some decent economic kind of activity, growth, and that they can share in part of. Hopefully, be less restrained as they try to compete with the rest of the world in semiconductor production eventually.
You you got to think that they're gonna ease off of that COVID policy because it's not going anywhere. Like it's gonna be here
Yeah,
forever. You can't just shut down a third of your country like every year. It's not. You can't do that.
I know.
Well, they
I
can.
I would agree. What I didn't, I would have to do. That is interesting because they're playing an entirely different game than we are here, right? If you look at it from a standpoint of there's what 1.6, 1.7 billion people in China at this point, they're actually talking about
Ish.
kind of stimulating kind of population growth is actually one of the things he mentioned in that speech. The question is, when you start looking at, okay, if say COVID at this point only has like a 0.1% mortality rate, something like that, when you talk about 1.6, 1.7 billion people, that's still a lot of people that would be at risk of dying from COVID,
Yes.
right? So I get that their math is very different than ours, and they haven't developed the herd immunity we have. Vaccination status in China, I'm not exactly sure if they were taking any Western vaccines. I believe they developed their own. Not have no idea what the clinical efficacy of that is. So those are real questions that you'd have to be more nuanced in their data to understand, I think.
Yeah, but you can't get natural immunity if you shut down part of the country every time there's an outbreak. It's not
I
a thing.
agree. I agree.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
I didn't know that they made their own vaccines. I actually did not know that. That seems common
Yeah.
sense, but
I mean, they made the virus too, right? Like allegedly, maybe.
okay, fair enough. I don't know if you want to get into that, but
I don't know. I don't know any data on that. I'm just throwing out the joke about it because,
just
like, obviously
see
they have
Jonathan
capability for
Stewart.
producing things.
Just after this video, guys, go look at Jonathan Stewart on Colbert. It's pretty funny.
All right,
All right,
all right, guys. Well, let us know what you think about Baba stock.
give us a like and subscribe if you're depressed about Baba. Bye.